Today on Upfront, Governor Walker's campaign hits the reset button, promising to wreak havoc on Washington. Next, ABC political director Rick Klein on the challenge for Walker. Can he get his mojo back? Then, free tuition at the Milwaukee Area Technical College. MATC's president on the plan and the promise. And the uncertain future of the agency that oversees state elections. Jay Heck of Common Cause Wisconsin on whether the Government Accountability Board's days are numbered.
Covering the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Upfront with Mike Boucher.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Upfront. And yes, we have a new look to our program today. It's our new set. We hope you enjoy it. Speaking of new looks, Governor Walker has to be hoping that voters will give him a serious second look in the next GOP presidential primary debate. It takes place Wednesday night at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in California. After a fast start early this year, Walker's campaign has slumped in recent weeks. He's fallen precipitously in national and state polls. He didn't wow voters in the last debate, and he's faced criticism from some in his own party for failing to articulate clear positions on several important issues. So what does he need to do in the Wednesday debate, and how does he change the national narrative of a struggling campaign? We're asking ABC News political director Rick Klein in Washington today. And Rick, it's good to have you on the program. And let's talk about the stakes for the governor in this second debate. From your perspective, what are they?
A big early moment for Scott Walker. He dominated the first half of this year, had an almost unprecedented rise before even being a candidate. Seemed like an A-list top-tier frontrunner, no doubt about it. And then the fall has been even quicker. It's incredible. An Iowa poll taking him that he was in first place 2 months ago, now in 10th place, way back in the pack. So he has to fight now a storyline that's emerged about him that just says he's not ready for prime time, and that says he belongs, he has to prove that he belongs in that first tier once again, because that's the way back into this conversation. That's the way back to the nomination, and it's a difficult road. We've seen him try a couple of different strategies to try to revive a campaign that has been flagging by any objective measurement.
Rick, how does he do that in the second debate? Because now there is a perception of him as being a guy who's back in the pack. It's hard to get airtime. You've got big, showy personalities on that stage. How does he do that in a second debate?
He has to find his own storyline, and he's made some noises about this recently, about kind of being a mini Trump. He's been talking around the country about wreaking havoc on Washington. I don't know that that's the perfect vein for him. I think his campaign needs to find other ways for him to get into the conversation, even if it's not the main conversation. We know that Donald Trump's going to be a story. We know that Ben Carson, the new number 2 in the race, is going to be a story. We know that Carly Fiorina getting on the stage for the first time with the big boys is going to be a story. What is Scott Walker's story? How does he distinguish himself? Are there any lines that he can unfurl that make maybe a sidebar to the coverage of the debate? I think he's going to have a hard time out-trumping Trump, and I think he's going to have a hard time meeting some of the other candidates that have more experience on national security, on national issues, on their own terms. He has to find his own terms and make his own mark.
Yeah, an interesting comment in the New York Times on Friday from a Walker senior advisor who said, we're not panicking. We don't have to swing for the fences. We just have to have hit some real singles, I think was the term he used. Those are fairly modest expectations for a guy who's now 10th in the polls in Iowa.
Yeah, on one level, they're right. I mean, look, it's too early to start panicking and to start doing desperate things. There are plenty of candidates that are in much more desperate times. At least he's on the main debate stage as one of the top 11 candidates. But I do think there's a growing sense of a need to revitalize this campaign, and I don't think it's a time for singles. Maybe I'd go with doubles. Extra base hits would serve him well. You don't need to hit homers. You don't need to knock Donald Trump out of the park. I don't think that's going to work at this stage. The campaign isn't primed for that. But look, he has some fundamentals that are extraordinarily strong right now. He still has a high favorability numbers. It's not that people have watched him and looked at him and said they just don't like him. They just don't like him as their first choice. They just don't think he's likely to win right now. So that's what he has to work on. He doesn't want people to suddenly turn on him in a negative way. That's something still to build on. I think in some ways the campaign is struggling from its early success because he wowed Iowa with an early speech and rocketed to the front of the pack in state and national polls. There was an expectation that he could continue that. I don't think the campaign ever planned for that to happen. You don't go wire to wire in this game. I do think that they were a little bit caught by surprise by the early attempt attention, and now they've had a hard time maintaining that. And so I think he just needs to look for his comeback story at some point. I think, though, that has to start with putting points on the board at this debate. He has to get himself back into that national conversation if people are going to consider him as someone who's a real threat for the nomination.
You sense that his campaign is trying to play something of a long game, where they figure that maybe some of the people who are getting a lot of the attention right now, the Donald Trumps, maybe even a Ben Carson, may somehow over time begin to see their star diminish somewhat, and that then he becomes a reasonable alternative. Is that how the Walker folks view their chances here?
Yeah, 2 points I'd make. One is they're the first to admit that they weren't quite ready for the wave of attention that they got early in the year. They weren't equipped to take advantage of that, and they kind of downplayed that a little bit at the time. Secondly, look, he's still got a great resume. He's still got a solid record among Republican voters to work on. The fact that he was able to win those 3 elections inside 4 years in a purplish to blue state, that's something that Republican voters will pay attention to. They have to now, the campaign now has to hope that they will come to a point where they're looking at resumes, they're looking at records, they're looking at policy positions in a different way than they are right now. Because right now you have more than half of the electorate going to Donald Trump and Ben Carson, 2 men who haven't spent a day in elected office, 2 men for whom most policy positions are vague at best, certainly ill-defined. So when you're a governor who has a record, and you have to start talking about that record in real, tangible ways, you have to hope that you emerge. But right now, it's a couple of bank shots that get him there. So he has to decide, how do you make a mark in this campaign? The biggest danger that Scott Walker faces in September before the voting starts is for him not to be part of the conversation, not to be a relevant factor. If that happens, donors start to get nervous as well. I still think Scott Walker is standing at the end of the day. He's one of a handful of campaigns that are able to make the play in the early states and beyond to get it done. This has just been a bad stretch of time for him.
Yeah, and in your recent recollection, it's been, as you said earlier, Rick, it's been pretty dramatic in a fairly short period of time.
Yeah, I can't think of any precedent to see a candidate go from 1st in Iowa to 10th in Iowa in the space of 2 months without an oops moment, without a gaffe, without an intervening piece of information that came out, a big scandal or expose. None of those things have happened to Scott Walker. Scott Walker has had some rough news cycles when he seemed to equivocate on issues or not wanted to answer directly or flip-flop even, you might say, on some issues. But there hasn't been one defining thing that everyone says, wow, this shows the guy's not ready. Quite to the contrary, people still like him. They tend to like what they're seeing from him. They're just not right now convinced that he can be president. And that's a hard thing to establish. But again, you can come from a much weaker position than Scott Walker does right now. He knows that he's already convinced a good portion of voters once. He just now has to do it again.
ABC News political director Rick Klein joining us today. Thanks very much, Rick. It's always good to have you on the program.
Thank you, Mike. My pleasure as always.
And our editorial partner, WisPolitics.com, has a roundup of local and national coverage of Governor Walker's campaign. You'll find it on the Walker Watch blog at WisPolitics.com. Free tuition sounds almost too good to be true, but it's the real deal at one Wisconsin technical college. Next, the MATC promise, how and why the school will give some students a free ride. That's when Up Front continues.
Up Front with Mike Goucher, brought to you by the American Transmission Company and the Wisconsin Corn Growers Association.